The evening had started like any other for Lily Chen. The familiar weight of the serving tray balanced perfectly against her palm as she weaved between the tables of the Golden Grove, an upscale restaurant where she had worked for almost 3 years. The soft lighting caught the crystal glasses and polished silverware, creating tiny stars across the white tablecloths. It was Friday night and the restaurant hummed with conversation and the occasional burst of laughter. Lily tucked a strand of her dark hair behind her ear and checked her watch. 4 more hours until her shift ended. Her feet already ached in the required black shoes, but she had long since learned to ignore the discomfort. The tips at the Golden Grove were good enough to help her chip away at her mountain of student loans each month. "Table 12 needs their check, and 15 just got seated," said Rita, the head waitress, as she passed by with a tray of desserts. "And heads up, 15 is Jack Porter and his business crowd. Big spenders, but—" Rita rolled her eyes, which told Lily everything she needed to know. Jack Porter was well known among the staff, a real estate tycoon whose face occasionally appeared in the business section of the local paper. He came in every few weeks, always with different associates, always ordering the most expensive items on the menu. He tipped well, but had a reputation for treating the staff like they were invisible unless he wanted something. Lily grabbed menus and made her way to table 15. 5 men in expensive suits were already deep in conversation, champagne glasses half empty before they'd even ordered food. She recognized Porter immediately, tall with silver-streaked dark hair and a watch that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the Golden Grove. Can I start you with some appetizers this evening?" Lily smiled professionally, pen poised over her notepad. Porter glanced up, his eyes taking a second too long to focus on her face. "We're celebrating a $50 million deal. Bring us your best champagne, not this starter stuff. And whatever appetizers the chef recommends." He waved his hand dismissively, already turning back to his companions. "Of course, sir." Lily nodded and stepped away, used to such treatment from certain customers. In the kitchen, she relayed the order to Chef Howard, who grunted and began preparing a selection of his signature small plates. The evening progressed normally. Lily shuttled back and forth between her tables, refilling water glasses, delivering steaming plates of food, clearing away emptied dishes. Table 15 grew louder with each round of drinks. Their laughter boomed across the restaurant, drawing irritated glances from couples trying to enjoy quiet dinners. By the time Lily brought their desserts, 5 different offerings from the menu plus a special chocolate creation Chef Howard had prepared in honor of their deal, Porter's face had flushed red with alcohol, and his voice carried even more than before. "This is what success tastes like. Gentlemen," he announced, lifting a spoon of creme brulee. "Remember when we started in that tiny office with the leaky ceiling? Now look at us. Top floor views and deals that make the competition weep." As Lily carefully set down the last dessert plate, the classical music that always played softly in the background changed. The gentle violin piece gave way to Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piano solo that had once been as familiar to her as breathing. Without realizing it, Lily's fingers moved slightly at her side, muscle memory tracing the notes in the air. She caught herself and stopped, but not before Porter noticed the movement. "You like this music, waitress?" he asked, eyebrows raised in surprise. Lily hadn't expected to be addressed directly. "Yes, sir. Chopin is beautiful." Porter's surprise deepened. "You know Chopin?" "I wouldn't have guessed." He looked at her with new interest, studying her face as though seeing her for the first time. His gaze shifted to the far corner of the restaurant where an old grand piano sat, more decoration than instrument these days. It had been there since the Golden Grove opened, but Lily had never seen anyone play it. "That piano," Porter said, pointing with his dessert fork. "Does it work?" "I believe so," Lily replied, though she wasn't certain. "It gets tuned twice a year." One of Porter's companions laughed. "Jack's grandmother was a concert pianist. He grew up forced to listen to this stuff. Now he inflicts it on all of us." Porter ignored the comment, his eyes still fixed on Lily. "You know, there's something about you, the way your hands moved just now." His words were slightly slurred, but his gaze was sharp. "You play, don't you?" The question hit Lily like a physical blow. She hadn't touched a piano in 2 years. Not since she'd walked away from the music conservatory, her dreams crumbling under the weight of family obligations and financial reality. The grand piano in the corner suddenly seemed to grow larger in her vision. Both beckoning and threatening. I used to, she answered simply, hoping to end the conversation. Porter's face lit up with the peculiar excitement of someone who has just had what they believe to be a brilliant idea. I knew it! I'm never wrong about these things. He turned to his companions. Gentlemen, I think we're about to get some entertainment with our dessert. Lily felt her stomach tighten. Sir, I should check on my other tables. Nonsense, Porter interrupted, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out his wallet. He withdrew several $100 bills and laid them on the table. I'll make it worth your while. By now, nearby diners had begun to watch the exchange. Lily saw Mr. Winters, the restaurant manager, looking their way with concern from his position near the entrance. I don't think that would be appropriate, Lily said quietly, trying to maintain her professional composure. Porter's expression changed, the friendly interest hardening into something more challenging. $1,000, he said, adding more bills to the stack. $1,000 if you can play something that impresses me on that piano. He gestured around the restaurant. Everyone here would enjoy some live music, I'm sure. One of his companions chuckled uncomfortably. Jack, maybe the lady doesn't want to perform. That's a lot of money to turn down, Porter replied, not taking his eyes off Lily. Unless you were lying about being able to play. The accusation stung, touching a nerve Lily thought she'd buried long ago. $1,000 was more than 2 weeks' worth of tips. It would cover next month's rent with enough left over to help her brother with his medication. But the thought of playing again, in public, after so long, after what happened at her final recital. What do you say, waitress? Porter pressed, his voice carrying through the now quieter restaurant. Show us what you can do or admit you were just pretending to know about fine music. Mr. Winters was moving toward their table now, clearly preparing to intervene. Several other servers had paused in their duties, watching the scene unfold. Lily felt heat rising to her cheeks. Not just embarrassment at being put on the spot, but a flicker of something else. Pride, perhaps, or defiance. You know what? Lily said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. I accept your challenge. Porter's eyebrows shot up, clearly not expecting her to agree. Then he smiled broadly and gestured toward the piano with a flourish. The stage is yours. Mr. Winters reached them, concern etched on his face. Is everything all right here? Everything's fine, Porter replied before Lily could speak. Your talented waitress is about to give us a musical interlude. Winters looked at Lily questioningly. She gave a small nod, then untied her black apron and handed it to Rita, who had appeared at her side. Are you sure about this? Rita whispered. No, Lily admitted quietly. But I'm doing it anyway. As she walked toward the piano, the sound of her footsteps seemed unnaturally loud on the hardwood floor. The restaurant had gone completely silent, all eyes following her progress. The grand piano waited, its polished black surface reflecting the soft lighting from above. Lily hadn't planned to ever sit at a piano bench again. Not after the disastrous final performance that had shattered her confidence and sent her fleeing from the conservatory. Not after the months spent unable to even listen to classical music without feeling sick to her stomach. Yet here she was, pulling out the bench and sitting down, adjusting her position out of habit. The ivory keys seemed to glow, inviting and terrifying at once. She placed her hands above them, noting with distant surprise that they weren't shaking. For a moment, Lily closed her eyes. She could feel the weight of every gaze in the restaurant, could practically hear Porter's smug expectation of failure. But deeper than that, she felt something stirring. The part of herself she'd tried to lock away. The musician who once played for hours until her fingers cramped and her heart soared. Lily opened her eyes, took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes that flowed from Lily's fingers were hesitant, like a person testing ice on a frozen lake. For a brief moment she wondered if she'd forgotten everything. 2 years was a long time to go without playing. But as her hands connected with the keys, something remarkable happened. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget. She started with Chopin, the same nocturne that had been playing over the restaurant speakers moments ago. The familiar melody wrapped around her like an old friend returning after a long absence. With each note, her confidence grew, her back straightened, and her touch became more assured. From his table, Jack Porter watched with widening eyes, the smug smile fading from his face. He had expected fumbling, amateur playing. the kind that would provide his associates with a good laugh and a story to tell later. What he was hearing instead was something altogether different. Around the restaurant, conversations had completely stopped. Diners sat with forks paused midway to mouths. Servers stood still with trays balanced on their palms. Even the kitchen staff had emerged to peek through the service doors, drawn by the unexpected music flowing through the dining room. Lily closed her eyes, allowing her fingers to find their way across the keys from memory. The nocturne was just a warm-up, she decided. If Porter wanted to challenge her, she would show him exactly what she could do. As the final notes of Chopin faded, she transitioned without pause into Liszt's La Campanella, one of the most technically difficult pieces in piano literature. Her hands began to fly across the keyboard, leaping impossible distances with precision that came from thousands of hours of practice. The piece required superhuman dexterity, with rapid repeated notes and hand crossings that had once made her professor at the conservatory shake his head in amazement. "Good heavens," whispered an elderly woman at a nearby table to her husband. "Who is this girl?" Mr. Winters, the restaurant manager, stood transfixed near the kitchen doors. He had hired Lily 3 years ago, conducted her interview, seen her resume, yet somehow never known she possessed this extraordinary talent. How had she never mentioned it? Why was she carrying plates instead of performing on stages? As Lily reached the most challenging section of the piece, a slight smile played at the corners of her mouth. Her hands were remembering, her fingers finding their strength. The years of practice had left their mark in muscle memory that no amount of time could erase. She had spent countless nights perfecting this very passage, practicing until her forearms burned and her roommates begged her to stop for the night. Porter's table had gone absolutely silent. One of his associates, a thin man with glasses, had turned his chair completely around to better see the performance. Another had pulled out his phone and was recording the unexpected concert. Porter himself sat with his champagne glass suspended midair, his expression shifting between disbelief and growing admiration. Halfway through La Campanella, Lily opened her eyes and gazed around the restaurant while her fingers continued their dance across the keyboard. The faces looking back at her were stunned, some open-mouthed in astonishment. She saw Rita grinning widely from beside the service station. Chef Howard stood in his tall white hat at the kitchen doorway, arms crossed but with an unmistakable look of pride, as though Lily's talent somehow reflected well on his restaurant. For the first time in 2 years, Lily felt the familiar thrill that came with performance, the electric connection between musician and audience, the power of holding an entire room spellbound. How had she lived without this feeling for so long? How had she convinced herself she could walk away from something that was so deeply a part of who she was? As she brought Liszt's challenging piece to its thunderous conclusion, Lily made a split-second decision. Instead of ending her performance there, she smoothly transitioned into something entirely different. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, beginning with the gentle, haunting first movement that everyone recognized. The change in tempo and mood created a collective sigh throughout the restaurant. A waiter who had been frozen in place finally remembered to set down his tray. An older couple reached for each other's hands across their table. The gentle arpeggios washed over the room like moonlight itself, creating a moment of shared tranquility in the usually bustling restaurant. Lily's thoughts drifted as her hands worked their magic. She remembered the day she had walked away from the conservatory, the disastrous final recital where her nerves had gotten the better of her, causing a memory slip in the middle of a Rachmaninoff concerto. The humiliation had been overwhelming, performing in front of judges, fellow students, and worst of all, her family who had sacrificed so much for her education. Her brother's medical bills had been mounting. Her mother had taken a second job, and there Lily was, pursuing an expensive degree in a field where success was never guaranteed. The memory slip had seemed like a sign, a clear indication that she wasn't good enough, that all the sacrifices were for nothing. So she had walked away, packed up her apartment near the conservatory, and found work as a waitress. She had avoided pianos, avoided classical music, avoided anything that might remind her of the dream she'd abandoned, until tonight. As she played the familiar notes of the Moonlight Sonata, Lily realized with sudden clarity that she had been punishing herself unnecessarily. One bad performance didn't negate years of dedication. One memory slip didn't erase her passion or talent. Looking up again, her eyes met Porter's across the room. The arrogance was gone from his face, replaced by something that looked almost like reverence. His challenge, meant to embarrass her, had instead liberated something she had locked away. For that, at least, she could be grateful to him. The first movement of the sonata came to its gentle conclusion. Lily paused, her hands hovering above the keys. The restaurant remained completely silent, the audience collectively holding their breath, waiting to see what would come next. Lily could have stopped there. She had more than met Porter's challenge. The $1,000 was undoubtedly hers, but something had awakened inside her that wouldn't be easily put back to sleep. With a deep breath, she launched into the third movement of the Moonlight Sonata, a whirlwind of emotion and technical brilliance that stood in stark contrast to the peaceful first movement. Her hands once again became a blur across the keys as the tempestuous music filled the restaurant. This was no longer about Porter's dare or the money. This was about Lily reclaiming a piece of herself, about remembering who she was and what she loved. Each crashing chord and lightning-fast run was an affirmation. I am still here, I am still a musician, I never truly left. Mr. Winters had disappeared into his office and returned with something in his hand. He stood near Porter's table, watching Lily with an expression of wonder and what looked like calculation. Restaurant owners were business people, after all, and he was clearly seeing new possibilities. As Lily brought the sonata to its powerful conclusion, the final chords resonating through the room, there was a moment of breathless silence. Then the restaurant erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, napkins slipping unnoticed to the floor. Someone whistled. Chef Howard, not usually given to displays of emotion, was clapping as vigorously as anyone. Lily sat motionless at the piano for a moment, overwhelmed by the response and the rush of emotions surging through her. Her hands, which should have been rusty from disuse, felt alive and electric. Her heart was pounding, but not from fear or anxiety, from exhilaration. Slowly, she stood and turned to face the room, giving a small, humble bow as the applause continued. Her eyes found Porter again, who had risen to his feet along with everyone else. The challenge in his eyes was gone, replaced by genuine admiration. He gave her a respectful nod, acknowledgement of a talent he had not expected to discover. As Lily made her way back toward Porter's table, her colleagues watched her with new eyes. She was no longer just Lily the waitress. She was Lily the pianist, Lily the artist. She had stepped out of one world and back into another in the span of a 15-minute performance. What would happen next, she wasn't entirely sure. But for the first time in 2 years, Lily felt like herself again. Whatever came next, she would face it with her music. The applause followed Lily as she made her way back to Jack Porter's table. Her cheeks flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and pride. For years, she had dreamed of standing ovations in grand concert halls, not in a restaurant where minutes earlier she had been serving dessert. Yet there was something pure about this moment. Unexpected, unplanned, and completely genuine. Porter stood as she approached, his earlier smugness replaced by something that looked almost like respect. He held out his hand, and for a confused moment, Lily thought he wanted to shake hers. Instead, he pressed the stack of $100 bills into her palm. That, he said, his voice quieter than before, was not what I expected. One of his associates, a younger man with kind eyes, shook his head in amazement. Where did you study? He asked. That was incredible. Before Lily could answer, Mr. Winters appeared at her side. The restaurant manager placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Lily, would you mind joining me in my office for a moment? Gentlemen, please excuse us. Your desserts are on the house tonight. Porter nodded, though his eyes remained on Lily with newfound interest. Of course. We'll be here a while longer. As Mr. Winters guided her away from the table, Lily noticed that many diners were still watching her, some whispering to each other, others smiling warmly when she caught their eye. Rita gave her a thumbs up from across the room, and Chef Howard, who had returned to the kitchen, poked his head out to wink at her as she passed. In the small office at the back of the restaurant, Mr. Winters gestured for her to sit in the chair opposite his desk. He remained standing, pacing slightly, running a hand through his thinning hair. In the 3 years you've worked here, he began, how is it possible that I never knew you could play like that? There was no anger in his voice, just genuine bewilderment. Lily looked down at the money in her hand, still not quite believing what had just happened. You never asked, she said simply. Then, realizing how that sounded, she added, I mean, I haven't played in a long time, not since I left music school. Mr. Winters stopped pacing and sat on the edge of his desk. Left music school? With that talent? Why on earth would you do that? It was a question Lily had asked herself countless times over the past 2 years. The answer was complicated, wrapped up in family obligations, financial pressures, and her own crippling self-doubt after one bad performance. It's a long story, she said, but tonight reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Mr. Winters nodded thoughtfully. Well, I'm not one to pry into personal matters, but I do know an opportunity when I see one. He leaned forward.
How would you feel about playing here regularly?
Saturday evenings to start. We'd pay you, of course. Not as much as that fellow out there, but a fair rate. You could still keep your waitressing shifts if you want them. Lily blinked in surprise. You want me to perform here? As a pianist? That piano has been sitting there gathering dust since my father opened this place 20 years ago. He always wanted live music, but we never found the right person. Mr. Winters smiled. I think we just did. As Lily considered the offer, there was a knock at the office door. Rita poked her head in, her expression apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, but that man from table 15 is asking to speak with Lily. He says it's important. Mr. Winters raised an eyebrow at Lily. It's up to you. I can tell him you've gone home if you'd rather not. Lily hesitated only briefly. No, it's okay. I'll talk to him. When she returned to the dining room with Rita, most of Porter's associates had left, but the man himself remained, nursing a glass of what looked like whiskey. The restaurant had largely returned to normal, though several patrons smiled or nodded as Lily passed their tables. Porter stood as she approached. Up close, she could see lines of fatigue around his eyes that his expensive suit and commanding presence couldn't quite hide. I wanted to apologize, he said, without preamble. My challenge was inappropriate. I'd had too much to drink and I behaved poorly. Of all the things Lily had expected him to say, an apology wasn't among them. It's okay, she replied, though she wasn't entirely sure it was. It turned out all right in the end. More than all right, Porter said. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a business card, which he handed to her. I'm not just a real estate developer. My family foundation supports the arts, particularly young musicians. We provide scholarships, arrange performances, help with auditions for prestigious programs. He gestured toward the piano. What you did tonight wasn't just good, it was exceptional. The kind of talent that shouldn't be serving dessert, with all due respect to this establishment. Lily looked down at the card. Jack Porter, Porter Family Foundation for the Arts, was embossed in elegant script, along with contact information. I don't understand, she said. What are you offering exactly? Porter's expression softened. A second chance, perhaps? Or a first chance, depending on how you look at it. Come to my office next week. We'll talk about what you need, whether that's returning to your studies, private coaching, performance opportunities. The foundation exists to help artists like you. Before Lily could respond, Porter continued, his voice taking on an unusual vulnerability. My mother was a concert pianist. She gave it all up to raise me and my sisters, to support my father's business ventures. By the time we were grown and she could have returned to it, arthritis had taken her ability to play. He looked toward the piano. She was my first teacher. When I heard you play tonight, for a moment it was like hearing her again. Lily felt an unexpected lump in her throat. Was this really happening? Just hours ago, she had been an ordinary waitress, her musical dreams locked away in a box of painful memories. Now, in the span of an evening, 2 doors had opened. Mr. Winters offering her a chance to play regularly at the restaurant, and Porter extending an opportunity that could lead much further. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Say you'll think about it, Porter replied. That's all I ask. He finished his whiskey and stood to leave. The card has my personal cell number on the back. Call me when you're ready. After Porter left, Lily found herself drawn back to the piano. The restaurant was quieter now, many of the dinner guests having departed. A few late diners lingered over coffee and dessert. The staff was beginning the nightly cleanup, though they worked more quietly than usual, as if hesitant to break the spell that still hung in the air. Lily sat at the bench again, running her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them down. What would her life look like if she accepted either offer, or both? Could she really find her way back to music after walking away? From the corner of her eye, she saw Rita approaching with a small plate. "Chef made this specially for you," her colleague said, setting down a perfect miniature chocolate soufflé. "He says you earned it," Lily smiled. "Thanks for everything. You were great tonight. Are you kidding?" Rita perched on the edge of the bench beside her. "You're the one who blew the roof off this place. So what did Porter want? And what did Winter say to you?" Lily told her about both conversations, still trying to process them herself as she spoke. "Wow." Rita's eyes widened. "Talk about a life-changing night. What are you going to do?" It was the question Lily had been asking herself for the past hour. What would she do? Go back to being just a waitress, pretending tonight never happened? Accept Mr. Winter's offer to play at the restaurant? Explore whatever possibilities Porter's foundation might offer? Or perhaps there was another path entirely, one that combined elements of all these options while charting a course uniquely her own. "I don't know yet," Lily admitted. "But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I have choices." She pressed a single key, letting the clear tone ring out. "Tonight reminded me of who I am, who I've always been, even when I tried to forget." Rita squeezed her arm supportively. "Well, whatever you decide, just know we're all behind you. Though I have to say, if you take Winter's offer, Friday nights are going to be a lot more interesting around here." As the restaurant staff finished closing for the night, Lily remained at the piano, playing softly. The $1,000 Porter had given her was safely tucked into her bag, enough to cover next month's rent with plenty left over. More importantly, she felt as though something long dormant inside her had awakened. Mr. Winters stopped by on his way out, coat draped over his arm. "Lock up when you're done," he said, dropping a set of keys on top of the piano. "And Lily, whatever you decide about my offer, know that you've got real talent. Don't let it go to waste again." Left alone in the dimly lit restaurant, Lily began to play Debussy's Clair de Lune, her fingers finding the delicate, dreamy notes with ease. As the beautiful melody filled the empty space, she felt tears sliding down her cheeks, not tears of sadness, but of release, of homecoming. For 2 years, she had been walking through life half asleep, believing that dreams were luxuries she couldn't afford. Tonight had awakened her, reminded her that passion wasn't something you could simply set aside and expect to survive intact. As the final notes of Debussy faded into silence, Lily made her decision. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. Whatever came next, music would be part of it. She was ready to play again, ready to dream again. And it had all started with a dare from a wealthy man who thought he knew exactly what would happen when he challenged a waitress to play the piano. The following Monday morning, Lily sat in the waiting area of the Porter Family Foundation, nervously smoothing the wrinkles from her best skirt. The office occupied the top floor of a gleaming downtown high-rise, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of the city. Everything about the space spoke of wealth and influence, from the original artwork on the walls to the sleek, modern furniture. After spending the weekend turning over her options, Lily had decided to at least hear what Jack Porter had to offer. She had also accepted Mr. Winters's proposal to play at the Golden Grove on Saturday evenings, with her first official performance scheduled for the coming weekend. "Ms. Chen?" The receptionist's voice broke through her thoughts. "Mr. Porter will see you now." Lily followed the young woman down a hallway lined with photographs of musicians at various concert venues. Some she recognized as famous performers, others who appeared to be students or emerging artists. At the end of the hall, Porter waited in a spacious corner office, the city spread out behind him like a living backdrop. "Lily," he greeted her, rising from behind his desk. He looked different here, more serious, more purposeful than the slightly inebriated businessman who had challenged her at the restaurant. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." As Lily settled into a comfortable chair opposite his desk, Porter pressed a button on his phone. "Alice, could you bring us some coffee? And ask Thomas to join us when he's free." Turning back to Lily, Porter's expression became thoughtful. "I've been thinking about your playing all weekend. It's rare to encounter that level of talent in such an unexpected place." "I've been thinking about it too," Lily admitted. "It had been a long time since I played for anyone." Porter nodded. "You mentioned you left music school. May I ask where you studied and why you left?" The question still carried a sting, but Lily found it easier to answer than she would have just days ago. "I was at Eastman for 2 years. I left after a bad performance. I froze during my sophomore recital. Forgot the music completely. She looked down at her hands. My family had sacrificed so much for me to be there. My brother has a chronic health condition, and the medical bills were piling up. It seemed selfish to continue pursuing music when I wasn't sure I could make it. Porter listened without interrupting, his expression betraying nothing. When she finished, he leaned forward. One bad performance doesn't define a career, Lily. Every musician, even the greatest, has had moments like that. I know that now, Lily said. Or at least I'm starting to remember it. A knock at the door announced the arrival of coffee, carried by a woman who introduced herself as Alice, Porter's assistant. Behind her came a tall, slender man with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. "Ah, Thomas, perfect timing," Porter said. "Lily Chen, this is Thomas Harrington, our musical director. Thomas, this is the pianist I told you about." Thomas shook Lily's hand, his grip firm and confident. "Jack has been singing your praises all weekend. He says you played Liszt like you were born to it." Lily blushed slightly. "It's been a while. I'm sure I was rusty." "Raw talent doesn't rust," Thomas replied, taking a seat beside her. "It just waits for the right moment to shine again." As Alice poured coffee for everyone, Porter explained the purpose of the foundation. "We identify exceptional musical talent and provide whatever support is needed. Financial assistance, performance opportunities, connections with the right teachers and mentors. Our goal is to help artists who might otherwise slip through the cracks." Thomas nodded. "Many talented musicians face obstacles that have nothing to do with their abilities. Financial hardship, family responsibilities, lack of connections in the industry. We try to remove those obstacles." "What exactly are you offering me?" Lily asked, still unsure if this was really happening. Porter and Thomas exchanged a glance. "That depends on what you want," Porter said. "If you're interested in completing your degree, we could arrange a scholarship. If you prefer to pursue performance directly, we could set up auditions, provide coaching, help build a repertoire. We'd start with an assessment," Thomas added. "I'd work with you to evaluate your current level and identify any areas that need development. Then we'd create a customized plan." Lily took a sip of her coffee, trying to absorb everything they were saying. Just days ago, her biggest concern had been making rent. Now these people were talking about scholarships and performance opportunities as if they were everyday possibilities. "Why me?" she asked finally. "There must be hundreds of talented musicians out there. Why offer this to someone you saw play once in a restaurant?" Porter set down his coffee cup. "Do you believe in fate, Lily?" "I don't, generally speaking. I believe in making things happen, in recognizing opportunities and seizing them. But sometimes," he paused, looking out at the city below. "Sometimes things align in ways that feel meaningful." He turned back to her. "I told you my mother was a pianist. What I didn't mention is that she received a similar opportunity when she was young. A wealthy patron heard her play at a church and funded her education. She always said it was the luckiest moment of her life, apart from meeting my father. When I heard you play, it felt like completing a circle somehow." Thomas leaned forward. "Plus, you're genuinely talented. I've worked with musicians for 30 years. Jack may have been moved by personal reasons, but he knows exceptional playing when he hears it." "I've already accepted an offer to play at the Golden Grove on Saturday nights," Lily said, feeling it was important to be honest. "Perfect," Thomas replied without hesitation. "Real-world performance experience is valuable. We wouldn't want you to give that up." Porter nodded in agreement. "This isn't an either-or proposition, Lily. We're offering to help you build a future in music, whatever form that takes." As their meeting continued, Lily's initial nervousness gave way to cautious excitement. They discussed possible paths forward: private lessons with top teachers, master classes, small recitals leading to larger performances. Thomas suggested a regular practice schedule and offered to help her select appropriate pieces to rebuild her repertoire. "There's a small performance space downstairs," Porter said as the meeting drew to a close. "Would you like to see it? Perhaps you could play something for Thomas so he can get a better sense of your style." Lily agreed, and they took the elevator down to the foundation's second floor. The space was intimate but professional, with excellent acoustics and a magnificent Steinway grand piano at its center. About 30 seats were arranged in a semicircle, though they were empty now. "This is where we hold student recitals and small performances," Thomas explained. "It's also a good recording space." As Lily approached the piano, she felt none of the fear that had paralyzed her 2 years ago. Instead, there was a quiet confidence, born from her spontaneous performance at the restaurant. She sat at the bench, adjusted its height, and looked to Thomas. "Any requests? Play whatever speaks to you at this moment," he said. Taking a seat in the front row, Lily thought for a moment, then began to play Schubert's Impromptu in G-flat major. Unlike the technically challenging pieces she had chosen at the restaurant, this was a piece of profound emotional beauty, contemplative, hopeful, with moments of both melancholy and joy. As she played, she thought about the strange journey that had brought her here. The restaurant job she had taken as a way to survive had unexpectedly led her back to music. Porter's arrogant challenge, meant to embarrass her, had instead reminded her of who she truly was. When she finished, the small room was silent for a moment. Thomas had closed his eyes, and Porter was looking at her with an expression that reminded her of how her father had looked at her first childhood recital, proud, moved, and a little bit in awe. "Well," Thomas said finally, opening his eyes, "I think we have our work cut out for us." "What do you mean?" Lily asked, suddenly worried she had disappointed him. "I mean," he said with a warm smile, "that we need to make sure the world gets to hear you play. Talent like yours doesn't come along every day." As they returned to Porter's office to discuss next steps, Lily felt a sense of rightness that had been missing from her life for too long. The path ahead wasn't clear yet. There would be challenges, hard work, perhaps even setbacks. But for the first time in years, she was moving forward rather than just getting by. Later that afternoon, as Lily left the building and stepped out into the sunshine, her phone buzzed with a text from her brother Dave. "How did the meeting go? Are you really going to play the piano again?" Lily smiled as she typed her reply. "Yes, I think I am. Actually, I know I am." She put her phone away and looked up at the blue sky overhead. The city seemed different somehow, full of possibilities she hadn't allowed herself to see before. All because a wealthy man had dared a waitress to play the piano, never expecting what would happen next. That night, Lily pushed aside the small coffee table in her tiny apartment and uncovered the digital keyboard she had kept hidden under her bed for 2 years. She plugged it in, put on headphones so as not to disturb her neighbors, and began to play, not for Porter or Thomas or the restaurant patrons, but for herself. Note by note, measure by measure, she was reclaiming her voice. The journey ahead might not be easy, but at least she was on the right path again. And this time, she wouldn't let fear or self-doubt drive her from it. 6 months had passed since the night Jack Porter dared Lily to play the piano at the Golden Grove. Half a year of hard work, challenges, small victories, and gradual transformation. Lily stood in the wings of the city's premier concert hall, peeking through the curtains at the crowd gathering in the auditorium. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but it was different from the paralyzing fear she had felt at her final conservatory recital. This was excitement, anticipation, the natural adrenaline of a performer about to take the stage. "Nervous?" Thomas asked, appearing beside her with a reassuring smile. Over the past months, he had become not just her mentor, but a trusted friend. "Terrified," Lily admitted. "But in a good way, I think." Thomas nodded. "That's exactly how you should feel. Channel it into your performance." Tonight marked Lily's debut as a featured soloist with the city's chamber orchestra, a significant step in her re-emergence as a classical pianist. The journey to this moment had been intense. 3 days a week she had worked with Thomas and other coaches at the Porter Foundation, rebuilding her technique and expanding her repertoire. Weekends found her performing at the Golden Grove, where her Saturday night concerts had become so popular that Mr. Winters had added a Friday show as well. The restaurant had changed too. What was once simply a fine dining establishment had become a destination for music lovers. Patrons now made reservations weeks in advance for tables near the piano. Mr. Winters had renovated the space, improving the acoustics and adding proper lighting for performances. He'd even hired 2 more pianists to play on the nights when Lily wasn't available. 5 minutes, called the stage manager, passing by with a clipboard. Lily smoothed the front of her emerald green concert dress, a gift from her mother, who had used her first bonus from her new job to buy it. The past 6 months had brought changes not just for Lily, but for her entire family. With financial support from the Porter Foundation covering her brother Dave's medical treatments, her parents had been able to reduce their work hours and focus more on their own health and happiness. "You've got this," Thomas said, giving her shoulder a gentle squeeze before stepping away to take his seat in the audience. Alone in the wings, Lily closed her eyes and took several deep breaths. She thought back to how it all began, the wealthy businessman's arrogant challenge meant to embarrass a waitress he assumed couldn't possibly have real talent. How different her life would be now if she had walked away. If she had let fear or pride keep her from sitting down at that piano. The lights in the hall dimmed, and the audience's murmuring faded to expectant silence. The conductor appeared on stage to enthusiastic applause, acknowledged the orchestra, and then turned toward the wings where Lily waited. This was it. The moment she had been working toward for months, or perhaps her entire life. With one final deep breath, Lily stepped onto the stage, the spotlight catching the subtle sparkle in her dress. She walked with measured steps to the gleaming grand piano at center stage, pausing to bow to the audience before taking her seat at the bench. As she adjusted her position and nodded to the conductor that she was ready, Lily scanned the audience. In the third row, she spotted Jack Porter sitting beside his wife, both looking at her with undisguised pride. Nearby sat Mr. Winters and several staff members from the Golden Grove, including Rita and Chef Howard, all dressed in their finest for the occasion. In the front row, her parents and brother Dave beamed up at her. Her mother wiped away a tear while her father gave a subtle thumbs up. Dave, looking healthier than he had in years, mouthed the words, "You got this, sis." The conductor raised his baton, and a hush fell over the orchestra. This was the moment, the culmination of countless hours of practice, of overcoming self-doubt, of rediscovering her passion for music. As the orchestra began the opening measures of Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 4, Lily allowed herself a small smile. Then her hands found the keys and she began to play. The piece had been Thomas's suggestion, not just for its beauty but for its significance. Unlike traditional concertos where the orchestra opened with a grand statement before the soloist entered, in this revolutionary work, the piano began alone, with a gentle, questioning phrase. The orchestra then responded, creating a dialogue rather than a competition between soloist and ensemble. It was perfect for Lily's debut, a piece about conversation, about finding one's voice within a larger context, about quiet confidence rather than showy virtuosity. As her fingers moved across the keys, she felt completely present in the music, aware of every note, every subtle shift in tempo and dynamics. The months of intensive training had rebuilt, not just her technical skills, but her musical intuition. Her ability to bring the composer's intentions to life while adding her own voice to the interpretation. When the first movement ended, there was a moment of breathless silence before the audience erupted in applause. Though it wasn't customary to applaud between movements in classical concerts, the spontaneous response seemed to reflect the genuine emotion Lily's playing had evoked. As the applause quieted and the second movement began, Lily caught Porter's eye briefly. He gave her a slight nod, and in that small gesture was a world of meaning, acknowledgement of how far she had come, of the talent he had recognized that night in the restaurant, of the potential that was now being realized on this stage. The remainder of the concerto passed in what felt to Lily like both an eternity and an instant. The strange distortion of time that comes when one is completely immersed in music. The lyrical second movement flowed into the joyful, energetic finale, where Lily's fingers danced across the keyboard with newfound confidence and precision. As she played the concerto's final triumphant chords, the audience was already on its feet. The applause was immediate and thunderous, with cheers and bravos ringing through the concert hall. The conductor gestured for Lily to stand and acknowledge the ovation. As she rose and turned to face the audience, the full impact of the moment washed over her. This wasn't just applause for a good performance. It was recognition of a journey completed, a talent reclaimed, a second chance seized. She bowed deeply, first to the audience, then to the orchestra behind her. The conductor shook her hand warmly, and the concertmaster stepped forward to offer a bouquet of white roses. After several more bows, Lily finally exited the stage, the applause still continuing behind her. In the green room after the concert, there was a steady stream of well-wishers, orchestra members, music critics, representatives from other arts organizations interested in booking her for future performances. Thomas handled most of these conversations, allowing Lily time to decompress and celebrate with the people who mattered most to her. I knew it, Rita said, hugging her tightly. From the moment you sat down at that piano in the restaurant, I knew you were meant for this. Mr. Winters shook her hand formally, then surprised her with a quick hug. The Golden Grove's most famous alumna, he said with a wink. Don't forget us when you're playing at Carnegie Hall. Her family surrounded her with love and pride, her mother unable to stop crying happy tears, her father unusually quiet, but with a glow of satisfaction on his face. Dave gave her a gentle punch on the arm, their childhood signal for "you did good." As the crowd in the green room began to thin, Jack Porter approached her, his wife beside him. "Congratulations, Lily," he said. "That was extraordinary." "Thank you," she replied, the words feeling inadequate for all she wanted to express. "For everything. Not just for tonight, but for seeing something in me that I had stopped seeing in myself." Porter's usually confident expression softened. "My mother always said that true talent never really disappears. It just waits for the right moment to re-emerge." He glanced at his wife, who nodded encouragingly. "Speaking of which, we have something for you." From his jacket pocket, he withdrew an envelope and handed it to Lily. Inside was an invitation, embossed, formal, and addressed to her by name. "The Foundation's annual gala is next month," Porter explained. "We'd like you to be our featured performer. It's a significant event. Donors, arts patrons, music industry professionals. A chance to introduce you to some important people in the classical world." Lily looked at the invitation, then back at Porter. "I'd be honored." As the evening wound down and the concert hall emptied, Lily found herself alone on the stage once more. The cleanup crew was working quietly in the aisles, but they had left the piano uncovered for her when she asked for a few more minutes. She sat at the bench again, not to perform, but simply to absorb the moment. 6 months ago, she had been a waitress who had given up on her dreams. Now she was a concert pianist with a future full of possibilities. Softly, just for herself, she began to play the piece that had started it all, the Chopin nocturne that had been playing in the restaurant when Porter noticed her fingers moving to the music. As the familiar notes filled the empty hall, Lily thought about the strange, wonderful way life sometimes worked. How a moment of challenge could become an opportunity, how a closed door could unexpectedly reopen, how a dare from a stranger could change everything. The final notes of the nocturne lingered in the air like a promise of things to come. Lily closed the piano gently and stood, ready to step into whatever the future might hold. The wealthy man had dared the waitress to play piano, and what happened next had indeed amazed everyone, most of all herself.